that the DIY myth is exactly that. It's a myth. Like, you can't do everything on your own. You can't. I love the fact that I look around. It's almost like Survivor Man. I look around my studio and I'm like, well, what do I have? Work so hard on the art and then leave the entire life of that art in the public's eye to chance. I've gotten to that point in my life where I know I have a good bass, I know I have a good electric, I know I have a good acoustic, I know I have good microphone.
Welcome to another episode of In the Chair. Today we are in the chair with David Cloyd. He is a Buffalo, New York-based singer-songwriter, a label owner, a family man, really a Renaissance man. Earlier this year, released his album Red Sky Warning, which has received quite a bit of acclaim. So, David, thanks for taking time to visit with us.
Thank you, Wiley. It's my pleasure.
Yes, and by us, I mean me, really.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Uh, I want to talk about the new album and songs and stuff about it. But let's assume someone's watching this who is not familiar with your music. Can you talk a little bit about how you got here? What is the music of David Cloyd?
Oh my goodness.
It's a real
I'm
quick hitting answer.
Yeah, just real quick. I'm an indie rock guy. I've been playing indie rock as long as I can remember, but I grew up as a classical musician, so I'm very, very much uh driven by there's a part of me and my musical persona that is very uh inspired by classical music. Uh, so I'm a big believer in composing parts. Like when I write a song, I'm writing not just a song, but I'm really part writing and arranging, and I think about it kind of from that perspective. I think that maybe that somehow, you know, makes me unique in some way. Uh, but I really I love indie rock. I love the idea of slightly left of center, slightly off rock and roll. I'm definitely not straight rock, but I have a lot. There are so many influences. I'm sure you could name some too that kind of if you like this, if we're on Netflix and if you like this movie, you'll also like these things. I'm very much a Radiohead fan, a Beatles fan, a Jeff Buckley fan. But I also like Steve Reich and John Adams if you're that much of a classical head. And I mean the names go on and on and on, but that's a good start.
Yeah. So your background, I mean, you played piano. We're studying saxophone for a while.
Mhm.
What I'm thinking about is most of the bands I've been in have been, guitar, bass, drums, singing. And so when you write an album, it's like, well, there's the bass part, there's the guitar, there's the drums. And then in the studio you get to do crazy stuff like let's put a tambourine on it and let's
Yeah.
let's bring in a horn for this song. I feel like you have such an arsenal of instruments available that you can play competently. How does that, do you tend to write on one instrument or do you write on multiple and then does a song kind of say, no, this one's going to be, we don't need percussion on this. Does that happen early on or is that a production recording thing?
Oh man. So I love talking about songwriting because it's an inexhaustible topic. I mean, I tend to write songs either on piano or guitar because those are the two main instruments that you can play and sing at the same time. I mean, I don't write songs on saxophone. I know I played it for a long time, but I don't write songs on saxophone. Um, there are lots of different ways to approach it. So, one of the things that happened with Red Sky Warning that was very different than my first album, On Hand Me a Fiend, was that um, I discussed with my producer, Blake Morgan, ahead of time. This is like the band that we're going to have for this album. And we did that partly because that's a very normal thing to do, and partly because my first album was kind of like me in a room throwing everything I could find at the wall. And all kinds of interesting things happened, but it's also having that infinite choice is kind of a trap in and of itself. So we wanted to say, like, here's the band. And so, I mean, they're all me. They're all still me, but here's the band. So for this record, it's fairly traditional. And for me, you'll laugh because for me, this is pared down. So it's drums and bass, it's electric guitar and acoustic guitar. It's keys, keyboards, and a string quartet, and then vocals. And that's the band. No more, no less. And like most of the songs, everybody's playing something. And then I've got a couple songs that are just like Climbing Ivy is just piano and string quartet and vocal. And then Walk the Earth is just string quartet and get and acoustic guitar and vocal and a little glockenspiel. And but but it's amazing to me what I love about music and songwriting and arranging and all of it is that you can take the same instruments and you can make it sound completely different just by the nature of the song. It just kind of happens. So sometimes I do have a sense like pretty quickly, oh, this is going to be the one without drums, you know, or something, or this is going to be the one that's just piano and string quartet. I might have a sense of something like that early in the songwriting process, but typically, uh, I like to write without an agenda and I let the song tell me what it wants to do. It's it I will I don't want to muck things up. So I just kind of like I it's funny. I have found more and more as I get older that writing is mostly a listening exercise, and you really need to be open to um like the sounds that you're making and where it wants to go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I One of the albums I've heard most recently was an album I was reviewing, and it was an older gentleman who wrote 20 or 30 songs, and he did one of the things where he rented a studio with a full set of musicians in Nashville. You know, it was kind of a
Mhm.
country album, and that's when you walk in, you hand them the charts, and they basically record the album in one take.
Yeah.
Um, and man, I kind of want to finance you going to Nashville and just like handing the charts to a country band and be like, all right, let's record this album and see
Would
what the
be
hell happens.
it would be fascinating. Like that is that I have so many different ideas like that that they're like, oh, if I could ever do that, that would be fun. That's definitely like one of the things I did here for this album release. My my I run a company here called Buffalo Music Club, and my business partner Eric Crittenden, I asked him to help me put a band together for an album release show, and I didn't want to like pick the musicians. I just wanted him to say like these are the people that are showing up, and then there was no I wasn't really wanting to dictate how it went. And there's a certain amount of that that is very uncomfortable for me that shouldn't surprise you. We've known each other for a very long time. But there's another part of me that really wants to embrace that and and uh at this point, the funny thing about songwriting and making albums and stuff is that yeah, this is my record, but I already feel like it's out and it doesn't really belong to me anymore. And and I mean, I'm fascinated specifically by that idea from like the Bob Dylan viewpoint where he picks people because of how they play and he has a certain sense of like what he wants something to sound like, but he picks the people that are going to just kind of be that thing that he wants. And then you go in the studio and play. And generally speaking, from what I've heard, it's like if it isn't working, he's just like, see ya, this isn't working, bye. And he brings in someone else. And I think that's a very healthy attitude. Uh, it's about the art, it's about the music, and to me, that's kind of the point of it. And I feel the same way when it's just me in here. and I'm trying to do something and it's just not working, I have to do the same thing to myself. I fired myself, I don't know how many times as I was making this record, but I just come back and I just try something else. I never got into disguises because I don't fall for it. But I mean, it kind of turns into that where I'm role playing um all these different parts, and it's like a constant auditioning process, and which in its own way is really painful. But it's also really when you finally get it, it's just the best feeling, when you finally get a part.
That's really interesting because it's really easy to hear maybe somebody you get a new lead guitarist in your band, you're just like, no, the sounds you're making don't fit. But when the
Yeah.
person is yourself, you're like, I'm not playing this in the style that I want it to be. Or well, and then you're you're unlimited in what you can do, but you're also limited to what your mind conceives of and
And and
what
it's
you can put down.
it's it's crazy too, because like there were a few songs that, okay, so like especially the day before, okay, that electric guitar part was like I started playing it and I was just like, oh, this is too easy. Except it sounded so good and it felt so good, and I just let go of that whole part of me that was just like, it needs to be complicated. That's the that's what it needs to be. And I mean, that's really was a lot of what I was doing with this entire record, is to take take my penchant for cleverness and just throw that out the window entirely. And this was all about honesty and vulnerability, and and finding what's past that for me. So I feel that um I tended to lean towards clever too much when I was younger. It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Maybe the next one I'll find myself like I need to lean away from vulnerability and honesty and all of that. I don't think that's gonna happen anymore, but
what's that phrase about you can dazzle them with brilliance or baffle them with bullshit? It's
yeah. And I was like, there's just a fine line between clever and stupid.
Um, you were just talking about the your song the day before, and that's one of the songs I wanted to ask you about.
Mm,
I have known you for decades, and have
yeah.
always known you as a really good musician, and then a really good musician who has written songs and plays them in public. Um, but I hadn't really thought of you as a singer. And I'm listening to the day before.
Mm.
Um, And I don't know how you feel about your own singing, but to me that might be your strongest vocal performance in a song. Like,
Oh.
do you feel that you grew vocally for this album, or did you just hit a couple just great notes? And you're like, hey, wow.
Man, you are so this is really man, you're meeting me in my moment. Um so I felt, ironically, I mean, is this because we've known each other for so long and been through so much together? I don't know, but I've always kind of felt that way about myself too. Um, as I started singing and writing songs and recording songs, I had people along the way say, "I really like your voice." And I had some weird moments with other musicians in our car. If we were driving around and I was singing along with a record or something, someone would say, "You have a really nice singing voice." And I would just go like, file away. Uh justification of what you want to do. There's I've had this feeling, a similar feeling about myself for a very long time. And so as we put this album together, um, just like I said, I was trying to focus everything uh in a different way and harness all of my musical powers in a different way, and avoid all the clever. and really get to the heart of the matter, um, my primary goal for making this record was that I could record one lead vocal for this album. And instead of doing what I did before, which was just throw as many vocals on everywhere as I could think, just one vocal. If one vocal can't carry this song, then I'm doing it wrong. Um, and so there aren't very many harmonies on this record at all. I mean, there are a few at the end of this of the day before. There are a couple counter melody lines, but they aren't harmonies, they're just counter melodies. You know the difference. I mean, I'm not singing in thirds with myself.
Yeah.
And I might double my voice here and there, but that's a subjective opinion. I really love doubled vocals, and a lot of it is to tell you, hey, we are now in this part of the song. We're in the chorus. The vocals doubled, and we do lots of things like that. But I really focused on delivering one vocal that I could feel that certain about, and that was very scary for me. Uh, so I worked really hard on that. So I just, I'm gonna say thank you, and I appreciate that you feel that way, because I do feel that way. I feel like, oh, I'm a singer. Um, I'm a real singer. That was part of this. Part of the making of this album was me kind of taking that journey. So, and as we worked on the record and I sent tracks to Blake, he would be like, I got to put a pin in this. There aren't a lot of vocal harmonies. And I said, yep, I know. And he was just like, I'm just gonna put a pin in it, that this is something to like talk about. And I was just like, okay, but I'm telling you, this is on purpose. And we got to the end of everything, and we went through every track and like got all of our doubles. And he just said, I get it. I understand what you were trying to do, and it's right. And uh, it took a lot. I think it took a lot of guts, which is not just me patting myself on the back, um, but it's mostly just like me. Uh, I think we all as artists have to take a moment and appreciate ourselves, because there's no one begging and asking us to do this work, and the world doesn't need it. There's plenty of stuff to listen to, but I really I committed to this idea, and I feel like I reached it. And this is still at this moment a really important thing that I'm pursuing, is um, making sure that I am a singer, and that what I sing can translate to live performance as well. That's something I've always struggled with, and it's like it's really my number one priority right now, moving forward, is like devoting myself to that in a way that I never really did when I was younger. And I can move on with grace and forgiveness and not really think about that too much. Uh, but I think it's part of it is because like I feel the same way about like all the vocal performances on this album. It's like that was the best I could do, and I felt really certain about every single thing that got put out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think I consciously noticed that because there's a lot of melody and harmony happening. Uh, but like you said, one of the core instruments is the string section. So I think that covers a lot of the sound space of
Yeah,
what vocals might have done on previous recordings.
definitely.
I have to tell you a funny thing. So your last album was Unhand Me Fiend that was released in 2009,
Yep.
right? Okay.
We put out "I Could Disappear," which was um like it was a reimagining of that album. We put that out, I think, in 2011, 2012, somewhere in there.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been a beat.
On one of the releases or the official release, there was the last track that had it was audio liner notes and a commentary with
Hmm.
you and Blake.
Hmm.
The Blake references are Blake Morgan from ECR Music Group, uh,
Yes.
David's label. So there was a commentary talking about all sorts of things about the different songs, and you recorded that album, in your small apartment, and you hit on a lot of the just funny lo-fi aspects of the album that, you didn't have an $800 snare drum. You manufactured something that sounded akin to a snare.
Yeah.
Um, and that was sort of that was, I mean, it was literally your physical space was fairly limited and you didn't have access to everything.
Right.
Were there moments like that in recording uh, Red Sky Warning, where even though you might have more access to things, you kind of use duct tape to put together some piece of sound, or was it a
Oh
little
man.
more organized?
It was a little more organized, but I will tell you, this is my studio. You're looking at it. It's not much bigger than the studio I had in Brooklyn, and I have some of these foam acoustic things on the walls, so that's an upgrade. I'm still honestly like this whole record was made with two microphones
Wow.
and a Hofner bass and one electric guitar. And I believe you'll love this. It's an Epiphone Flying V with gold humbuckers. That's the electric guitar on this record. And there's one acoustic guitar. It's a Martin Dreadnought, and and everything else is everything else. And I'm saying this in all honesty, everything else is in the box. Um,
Yeah.
I I can play drums, but I'm not a drummer. It's not like you. And uh and I have string players that I play with live all the time, but everything you're hearing is programmed, you know? And uh I feel like we pulled it off. Like if like for people who are really in the know, they'll know, but I at least the hope is, oh, that was really well done. You know, I feel like Blake is a masterful mixing engineer and mastering engineer. He's masterful at mastering, and he really nailed the mix and master of this. Like, I don't think anyone would think about it. But I think about every single one of those instruments from an idiomatic place. So all of my drums are real drums in my opinion. They're all there's nothing going on that's not real. It's
Yeah.
it's all very and I micromanage all of it because I know exactly what I want things to sound like. And yeah, like I'm still a fan of doing things with as little as humanly possible. The one change that I made for this album was and it was really important for Climbing Ivy. I have a piano upstairs, but it's very loud. And I don't mean like it makes a lot of it has a lot of noise in it. It's a beat up old studio console, and I could not record Climbing Ivy that part on that piano. I could not do that. So for that, I went to ground control recording here in Buffalo and recorded on a big Steinway grand piano
Ooh,
and
nice.
in a really nice room. And that what you hear is take two, and that was that. And it was just in and out, really easy. And I've I've learned to I think I've learned to it, I don't know how I want to say this. Like I love limitations. Stravinsky used to talk about how, if you want to start writing something or start a creative project, you need three limitations. You can't really start until you have at least three limitations. As soon as like for writing a song, it's, or any piece of music, you might say it's tempo and key and, starting note or mood or something. You need 3 points in space. It's almost like the three body problem. If you're a Neil deGrasse Tyson nerd, you can go look that up. But once you have those three limitations, it's really easy to move forward and make decisions. Until you have that, it's just infinite. So I love the fact that I look around, it's almost like Survivor Man. I look around my studio and I'm like, well, what do I have? And I've gotten to that point in my life where I know I have a good bass, I know I have a good electric, I know I have a good acoustic, I know I have good microphones, and if there's ever a need for something else, that's what I have Blake for. I can go talk to him and say like this isn't the sound I want, and he could say, "Oh, this is what you need." There's only so much I can ground I can cover, and he's the engineer, and I trust him implicitly, and I just don't have space in my brain for that 57th person. It's tapped out at 56. I just don't have any more room.
I think it's a great moment of personal growth that you didn't force record your noisy piano and you just hear strings popping and
Yeah,
mice running around or whatever, and then you just say, "Oh, damn it, that's the yeah."
it
So
felt really good. I mean, I tried one take and I very quickly went, sounds not good.
yeah, yeah, no, that's good. With I want to plug that you were covered in Spin magazine about a month ago,
Yes,
uh,
I was.
which was in the Now Hear This section. It was a really cool write up,
It
um,
was fun.
and I think you've talked about something that all artists are dealing with now is the influx of AI or
Oh, yeah.
chasing Spotify streams or you know this promotion doesn't work, and you talked a little bit just about why do we do this. I mean, so frequently there's not a huge financial gain by it. um, you're certainly going to have some critics. I don't know if you do, but certainly critics, some hate everything and some love everything, so that kind of weighs itself. you know but you just say just do it just to do it. um,
Yeah.
to make the question longer, um, I I kind of wondered what was it that inspired this album now? It's been 10, 15 years. What was like the impetus to be like, all right, no, I've had these ideas, I'm going to write and I'm going to record and release.
Right. Okay, so this is something that I can very easily talk to you about. Um and you already get it all, but this will be fun for I think people to listen to no matter where they are in their lives. I got married and I had kids, and that changes everything. It changes all of your life's priorities. It changes everything. I can't um in the midst of two babies in the house. Like I could disappear. I recorded all those vocals in my house. Um and it was another apartment that we were living in, and like my daughter screaming in the other room, like at 1 or 1.5, somewhere between 0 and 1.5, is all over that record. You just can't hear it. And I mean, it's a real life change. Um, and then soon after we had our second child, we bought a house, and we've been gut renovating that house forever. And, again, it's like, why am I renovating a house? Because I'm an artist. And if I was an artist living in New York City, I'd be living in like the lowest scale neighborhood I could both afford to live in and was safe
Mhm.
to live in. and nothing would really change. But as an artist, you're prioritizing things in your life so that you can keep making art. Now, the big thing for for me, the only place I feel like I ever have to, I hope I don't feel like I have to explain myself, but to explain, I never stopped making music. I never stopped writing songs. I stopped putting out records for a while because the methodology of making something and putting it out, the timing was always off. It was either a space issue or an equipment issue. The world has changed a lot and very quickly since 2009, 2011. Things moved very quickly. And somewhere in the late teens, um, mid to late teens, I had an entire version of this album recorded,
Wow. Wow.
almost, and it just wasn't right. And um, and Blake and I kind of huddled up and we discussed, well, these are the things that we need to change. And we scrapped everything and started over. And you know how much I felt badly about that? Zero. It's just nothing matters except the art. Nothing. I mean, it's like I have all the songs, they're all in me. All I got to do is move over here and start over. Okay, fine. So I reconfigured my studio, and at the same time he was reconfiguring his, so our worlds got a lot closer together and a lot easier to move back and forth. And just as I was coming up to, like, I don't know, 70-75% completion, we hit COVID, and that shut down everything for a number of years. And then it was just a matter of me finishing and timing. And you understand this too. It's like, just because I'm done doesn't mean we immediately go to mix and master and release. It depends on what time of year it is and all of that. So things just keep, and being a part of the label that I'm on, I also have to consider, well, who else is releasing records, and I have to kind of get in line behind everybody. And at that moment in time, I was getting in line behind a bunch of other people who already had releases ready to come out that had been put on hold from COVID too.
Yeah.
So I've been incredibly busy all these years, and uh, most of these songs, most of these songs are pretty old, at least for me, but they're new for you. And to me, that's part of the beauty of like good writing, if I can say that, is that it doesn't really matter when I wrote it. I mean, there are so many songs from groups and recordings from groups that if you put it on now, like I still feel very strongly that you can put on, Staying Alive or Night Fever or any one of those really good Bee Gees songs, and it sounds like it was recorded yesterday. It doesn't matter that it's disco. It's just so good that
Uh,
it does
I'm
it does
not even lying when I tell you I had a conversation last week because a Bee Gees song came on and and talked about, gosh, when you hear recordings from the 30s, they've got the crackle, the 40s, they kind of sound like this.
Mhm.
50s was lo-fi but better, and even 60s, just everything kind of sounds green tinted.
It's a little, yeah,
And then
it was technical. Yeah.
holy crap, the 70s hit, so something that was recorded in 75 sounds like it can sound like it was recorded yesterday.
Good. Yeah. And
Uh,
I mean, it doesn't, but I mean, beyond the recording of it, this song is just, it's a good song. It doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter when it was made. It's just a good song. And, and, and like the one song on this record, A Small Wooden Boat, that's the last song I wrote. And I wrote this after, um, I wrote this, and I honestly, I don't remember when I wrote it, which just proves that it doesn't matter. Yes. It was definitely the last song I wrote, and I came back to all of this at some point to, like, I got to finish this off because it's I can't tell you I enjoyed the process of stretching this out over so many years. But I can tell you it's not that like I haven't been Brian Wilsoning this thing. I haven't been torturing myself in the studio every day for like over 10 years to get this right. It
Yeah.
was just the timing to make an album and release it. Nothing was lining up.
Yeah.
And this year it lined up. And I'm not going to wait that long again to put something else out. I already have stacks and stacks and stacks of songs that are ready to go. I'm having to take a moment here too. Like, first of all, I'm just focused on this record because it just came out. And secondly, then I have to deal with certain equipment upgrades that I want to do between this record and the next record, the things that are going to level me up and things that need to happen, and things that are also dependent on what record am I making. There are lots of there are lots of things. There are lots of things to take into account, but the big picture was that I never stopped writing. I've never stopped working and making music, and it's always been a part of my life. I've done all kinds of things with it on and off. I just haven't released an album in that long.
I think that goes to speak to your patience. That I mean,
I can tell you I'm retroactively patient. I definitely didn't feel particularly patient during it. I mean, that even that moment, like we got to scrap everything and start over. Um, I did it, but then I was like moving, it wasn't like I was like, oh, that's cool. It's fine. I wasn't like chill. I wasn't chill about it. I just understood that this is the right thing to do.
I was going to say maybe patience isn't the right word, but understanding the process and understanding why. Um,
Yeah.
uh, there's a couple other things that I want to hit on. You talked to me previously a little bit, and this does involve maybe not patience, but understanding how Blake and ECR treat um, the release of an album. Um, and the opposite of that is some friends close to me released a vinyl um, recently and sent it off to the press and got the word back that, hey, it's going to arrive on June 1st. So they planned a release party the next week. And you can just see what happens. Life happens, delays happen. And so finally there was a release party and vinyl showed up and it happened around the same time. But it seems like how ECR and Blake and just sort of the philosophy of what happens there is just so much more planned out. Not that things aren't done quickly, but you understand the process of when the album finishes being recorded, and then the just mastering, and then promo, and so much promo before it drops. Can you talk a little bit about that, and I
Oh,
guess
it's
why the label is, I think, such a respected music label?
well, Blake grew this um starting in around 2000, the early 2000s at least. And it's grown from just him on his laptop to a global, major indie label. We have direct distribution with the Orchard and we have and Sony, and we have global music publishing with Sony. And all of that has been earned by Blake's hard work. Um, the man is relentless, and he is a strategic master. I mean, the honest truth is, um, you can't go about having a music career at random and have things move forward and progress. It's not going to happen. Um, now, now I would say there's nothing that we do that doesn't have thought behind it and strategy, and we will, you know, I wouldn't say that we move particularly fast, but we work really hard, um, all the time. So I don't I don't think any of us like to move what we would describe as fast because we're already just moving all the time, working all the time. Like they're filming a video this week for Yanata, and next week I'm filming videos. And every day, every week, every month has a list of things that if these things aren't met, it's it's not the end, but it's like these things have to keep going because if we're going to meet our deadline 3 months from now, then this has to be done this week. And maybe you can waffle that by a week, but you can't waffle it by a month because there are there are people outside of just us that we are coordinating with and working with that have needs too. And we have to meet their needs in order for our needs to be met. So a lot of this is just um I think it's I think it's a struggle. It's been a struggle for a long time for DIY artists, from the moment where we were sold this idea that you can do it on your own. It's the internet and you can just do it on your own. I've seen it so many times that people put their heart and soul into something, and then they get it all the way to this. They think it's the finish line, and that's the starting line, and then they don't know what to do. And they just kind of maybe they made a great record, maybe they made just a good record. Regardless, you get to that line and you think, well, now the world's just gonna hear it, right? They're just gonna hear it. We'll put it out on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever. I mean, this to me the big um one of the big secrets to me is when you look at the music industry, all the mechanisms and tools and platforms and companies and all of those things are constantly changing. They're constantly shifting and moving. You have to keep your eye on the ball. And if you want to successfully promote something that you've done and have it heard by people, you have to plan that way in advance. If you don't, you're going to miss the boat. And if you don't know how to plan it, then you have to try and look for partners. Like these are the filters to me that matter. Is presenting yourself um, to players in the industry that you feel could help you.
Mhm.
Like I feel very strongly that the DIY myth is exactly that. It's a myth. Like you can't do everything on your own. You can't. And to work so hard on the art and then leave the entire life of that art in the public's eye to chance.
Mhm.
To me, that's insanity. To me, it's sad that
Yeah.
you're willing to work so hard at making this thing. And to me, it kind of exposes the real fear that all artists have, which is that nobody's going to like my stuff, nobody's going to hear my stuff, nobody's going to react to it. It's not going to be heard, or even worse, it's going to be heard and it's going to be quickly forgotten. And to me, knowing that I'm working with a team who take the release of their art very seriously because it's everything. It makes me it changes my relationship with my art. And I already have a very serious relationship with my art. You know that we've made lots of stuff together over the years, but like I just don't feel like wasting my time. If I'm putting myself out there and I'm working on something, then I'm gonna make it as good as I possibly can. Uh, and then uh, but having that extra step, I mean, I can't say it puts the fear of God in me because that's not really how it is, but it's a little true. Like, like it makes you it forces you to respect yourself enough to take that seriously. And and the best thing about how Blake and how we all work together to run the business is that there is constant communication, and there's never some like, oh man, I forgot to tell you about this big thing that we have to do. It never happens. There's a very clear, I mean, things change all the time, but that's because there's a plan, and maybe something happens with the external world, or maybe even a little bit the internal world, and plans shift. But that's based on the fact that there is always a plan.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
life is basically dealing with change.
yes. Yes. And if you don't, I mean, it's one thing you don't want to control every aspect of your life that way. I mean, that would be a very uninteresting and very like closed off way to live. But this aspect of life to me, it's like you're already dealing with a massive uncertainty. I'm making art in 2025 during the wake of AI and untold disturbances in society, and I need it to be heard,
Yeah.
you know. And if we left that to chance, I can tell you what would happen. Nothing.
Uh, that's
Nothing.
that's interesting. I was actually talking with a label owner recently who was talking about album releases, and he said, I asked, how do you decide what quantities to order your physical product in? And he said, well, he's sort of regional in this area. He said, if I know if my band plays Austin, San Antonio, and Houston regularly, and I know 100 people show up to each of those shows, and they're not always the same 100. So let's say my band has 500 regular fans. I know for a fact not everybody's going to buy my album.
Right.
Um, and if I don't do anything else, you know, I don't know what the rate is of people buying a physical product, but it's small. It's, ones out of every 100
Yeah.
decide I'm gonna buy that. But the factor is, well, if you'll argue over whether the buzz on the guitar in track 7 is set at 7 or 8, and you'll argue for 2 hours about that, how much time are you putting into promoting the release to people who aren't the normal people? Parents probably going to buy the album. Maybe your cousin, your spouse, coworker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are likely.
That's exactly right. Like that's the thing. Blake devoted himself and years of his life to figuring out how to do this, how to run a label. And if you're not prepared to do that work, then you need to go find someone who wants to do it for you, who wants to partner with you and do that for you, because otherwise nothing's going to happen. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Um, like we didn't print any physical product for this album because why? No one buys CDs anymore. And by no one, I don't mean zero, but it's such a low number. Like if you have 400 or 500 fans and you already know ahead of time that until you're buying 1,000 of a product, you're not going to be able to print it for a reasonable amount, right? So all you're doing is making coasters and boxes for your basement. And like the world is changing. You got to adapt to that change. And if you're playing the same game where it's 2025 and you're pressing CDs and you know you have a fan base of about 400 to 500, and I don't know what you're doing. And I do understand there are a lot of people who print vinyl and they like to press vinyl and it's cool and all of that, but it's incredibly expensive to do. You have to remaster the album for it. It's a completely different mastering job than say a CD. And if you aren't doing that, then that's another big mistake. But um, it's a huge investment, and yeah, you can sell them at a premium price. But again, it's like the world has shifted away from physical product, and there are some niche markets. But unless you're like really big, like it's a losing game.
Uh, let me, this might be the last question. I actually have topics I want to talk to you about that I don't want us to run that long because we'll be talking for a long time. But whether this applies to you and Red Sky Warning or maybe ECR and all the artists release across the label or something else is in 2025, you release an album. What what are your metrics for success? Whether or not you're answering this personally or professionally or whatever. What is a successful album
Oh,
today?
I mean, uh, streams are huge. You got to get streams. Social media followers and all of that stuff, that's important. Um, we've grown, we've grown. I mean, I've been an experiment for the label because you can't get much deader than I was. Um, and we've brought me back to life. And that's been kind of our goal. Our only real goal for this release was to get me back to life and give me a chance. And I we all feel that we're really achieving that. And um, you know, the only thing I can really say is as we move through things, we kind of have a sense of, well, because we are constantly releasing music. Some things we release through Meridian, which is an imprint we have at ECR Music Group that's for artists that we help them release their music, where we like offer label services, but they aren't on our label. And then we have our mainline artists. So among everyone, and as we're constantly releasing music, we kind of have a sense of, well, if we do X, then Y happens, right? So as we've been going along with my release, for every X and Y for my record, Y's been a lot bigger than we thought, or at least it's been as big as we hoped. And so all along the way, it's like the Spin magazine, for example, we were all just like, I think we're gonna get it, you know, and that's because we've been getting it. So hopefully, and then we got it, and it was a huge relief for me because I didn't want to be the first one to not. Um, but our metrics are based on our continuing experience, you know? And so when we run these campaigns, we think we're going to get this much response from it. And then if we get less, then we need to understand why. And if we get as much, then we're constantly like, well, how can we make that bigger? It's constantly that. And for each artist, it's different. But like as a label, we have the history that allows us to kind of gauge what we're going to get out of it. And I mean, we have this discussion. That discussion happens with every artist. And it's funny because I'm part of those conversations with other artists. And then when it happens to me and I'm the artist, I'm treated the same way that everyone else is, even though I'm on the inside.
Yeah.
But it's because it's every artist, I don't want to say we're fragile beings, but it's we we have to be treated a certain way because we're the ones on the soapbox at the moment under the spotlight. And you feel the need to be guided, and you want to understand what you're getting into and what's about to happen. So I feel I feel like only doing it regularly, and this goes back to the point of, like, if you leave this to chance, you aren't learning anything. You just kind of, maybe you're learning every time you make a record, and you learn, like, oh, when we record drums, we use these, we gotta add those room mics because otherwise it sounds like crap, right?
Yep.
You know, you learn things about recording all the time, but if you're not willing to learn about this stuff, and to me, this is the hard stuff, because almost as soon as you learn something that you think, like, I can use that, it's over, and the world's moved on, and there's something else that you have to learn. It's relentless and unforgiving. But unless you're willing to learn how to how to do well and improve in that uh on that matter, you're going to be lost. You're going to be a victim. You're going to be at the whims of everyone else, which everyone else is in the same boat. They're, you know, if you turn on Spotify and you don't know what you want to listen to, they'll gladly serve it up, you know? And there are people all over the world paying for that, you know?
Yeah.
And it is I you know that you could argue that it's almost a pay to play system like it's LA clubs or something. But this is not new. This has been going on forever. It's advertising, it's promotion. It's always been this way.
Yeah.
And like that's to me that's the myth of the DIY culture is that that never changed. It never changed at all, not for even a minute.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. One of the biggest lessons I ever learned was you you think you're in a band and you get noticed and a DJ plays your song and it blows up and I thought that's how music was discovered and then discovered radio promotion budgets. Like,
yes,
oh, if you want a song heard, you pay 100 grand, maybe 250,000.
yeah, just that.
Then your song will be heard. And if it's good, then people will like it and buy more. But
Yeah, exactly. And you can be upset about how unfair that is, or you can figure out how to solve problems for yourself and how to do the best you can. And to me, that's the hardest thing, if you ask me, about being um, an artist in 2025, is that you could spend all your time lamenting about where you think you deserve to be in the echelon, in the public's mind, and I think that misses the point. I think I constantly go back to um, when I make art, I make the best art that I can, and because no matter what else happens, that's the only thing I have total control over. Um, and even at that, it's like you only have so much control over that as it is. You know, you show up in the studio on this day and your voice isn't good, so you switch and you do something else. Or you get to the end of a part and you're like, this is all it's all crap and I just have to delete it all and start over. This is, but the willingness to approach the art from that perspective where all you're doing is the best you can do, and you have to be really honest with yourself about, is that the best I can do? And then you also have to be very honest about, like, is that right? Because I mean there are constantly times when you're making something where something's a little off, but it's off in just the perfect way, and you get it and you know it and you leave it and you don't touch it. That's just as hard of a thing to learn as anything else. But to me, it's like you have to be willing to put to put everything after you're done making your album art and naming it and getting it ready for release. You have to put just as much effort into that entire arc afterwards. And you have to understand what that arc looks like. And if you don't understand it, then you have to find someone who does and get their help. Um, you know, learning that stuff is something that it's taken decades. You know, it took ECR Music Group 25 years to get to where it is right now. And it's that old saying, you know, it's like the best day to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best day to plant a tree is today.
yeah.
And this is everyone. Um, you have to decide if you want to just make stuff and put it out and sell it to your friends and you don't care about the results of it, then understand that and do whatever you want, you know? But don't expect anything to happen if you take that tack with your own releases. It's because it's not going to work out.
Uh, I love that. I think that's a good place to end because you've just given a philosophy to artists that I don't think enough artists appreciate. Um, and that it's taken you years to learn. It's taken Blake years to learn. But so thank you. David Cloyd, go listen to Red Sky Warning. Go purchase it. Give money on behalf of Red Sky Warning. Check out the Spin Records, the Spin Magazine feature, and Now Hear This. I think it's in the July 11th episode.
July. Yep.
Episode. I keep thinking of podcasts
It's
edition.
a it's a link,
Yeah, yeah.
but you could consider that link an episode of that feature.
It's that episode of the webpage.
It's an episodic feature at Spin. You were
And
correct.
yeah, and check out ECR Music Group. I have yet to hear a release from the label where I think, they didn't put much behind that one.
Well, please let us know if that ever happens.
They finally whiffed and half-assed something over at ECR. Has not
That
happened yet.
happens. If that happens, we're probably all in a meth house in Jersey at that point.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, David, again for taking time.
Thank you, my brother. It's good to see you.
You too.